Okay, so welcome again, everyone. This is Tibor from MultiSoft, and this is the introductory webinar of our 4.9 release. My colleague Robert is our partner manager, and as I said, my name is Tibor Meyer, who would not know me. So let's start with a short recap about the previous release, which was 4.8. That release was mainly about the new auto online offline behavior or auto online offline mode of MobileNAV, which now supports that special mode, which basically mixes the online and the offline world together into a very nice combination. Because your device, your mobiles or tablets will be able to work in online mode if they are receiving active signal to the server, so they can connect to the server. And if for some reason the device would lose the connection, then the device will automatically switch to offline. And for those pages where the configurator has decided that those pages should also be available with disconnected mode, then those will still be available. And the user don't need to do anything for that. The device will decide whether he's online or offline. Together with this feature, we have also introduced some other things like advanced profile configuration, which allows you much more power and much more control on the profile level for the pages. And we have totally redesigned our base configuration as well. So now I would say 90% of our base configuration pages are offline capable, including warehouse, jobs, production, sales, service, in all the areas. And in the profile, you can decide whether you are using the page, those offline capable pages in online or offline page. So the device should cache and prepare for the offline usage for those pages or not. We have also introduced the automatic JavaScript merge, which is also very nice for the developers, because you don't, from that point on, you don't need to export and merge the JavaScript files anymore. The system will automatically do that for you. You don't need to take care about that. If you add a new field, for example, to an offline page which already having a JavaScript code, then the system will merge that new field on-by-date trigger, of course, on the beginning with an empty on-by-date trigger, but that will be part of the JavaScript file automatically, and you can start to write code for that. We also introduced label printing with text-based templates and some other smaller features on the right side, as you can see. I will not read through them. If you want, you can also watch our webinar about 4.8, which was back in last year. And then you can deeply know and then see what we have done in that release. So let's see what we are having in 4.9 release. First of all, we are introducing MobileNAV on AL extensions. If you follow the content of our partner portal, then you already maybe realized that we have also already released the 4.8 version of the EL package a couple of weeks ago. And that was something like a beta version. Some of you already tried that, and thank you for the feedback for those. But now, together with 4.9, the AL extension version will also be available together with all the other supported platforms. So now MobileNAV is supporting 2009 R2 or above, so 13 R2, 15, 16, 17, 18, and Business Central on-prem and so with CAL and version as well. You can use the AL version in the on-prem installations, and we are also planning to provide a renumbered version for manual upload for the SaaS version, because in the SaaS you can only upload packages or objects, new objects which are in the 15,000 and 100,000 range. So therefore, we will also maintain a renumbered version of the AL extension version, because normally the AL extension will have the same object numbers as the CEL. Together with this, we have created an assisted setup for the add-on, so that will give you a very nice next finish wizard for the first installation of MobileNAV. We have thought about that, how the first users or the first partners can much more easily start to use MobileNAV, and the assisted setup is a nice way to support that. Office 365 authentication, that is also a must if we are heading into the Business Central SaaS version. So the client applications should be able to support the Office 365 authentication as well. Together with the Office 365 authentication support from the client application, we have also simplified our login screen because there the login configurations were not that well known, and we had basically thought about how to make that simpler for the user, and how the users will be able to much more easily find how to save a certain login configuration, how to switch between them, how to import it, or how to delete or manipulate it. We are also introducing some features for the offline. This new feature called Buy Trigger. I will talk about that a bit later, and you will see. I will also try to demonstrate that in live, if that will work. Hopefully, it's also just a new version of just a new mode. How the offline recalculation, which normally happens either during the login or by NAS traditionally. Now we are introducing a new buy trigger option, and I will also talk about this. We have also introduced two more offline settings, which is refresh after and filter by parent. This will able to bind two offline pages, which are traditionally header and line. They are in header and line relation, so that you can basically bind the line offline page to the header page, so their offline refresh strategy, so when they need to be recalculated or how they need to be recalculated will be bound together, and you don't need to manage one by one separately. And the filter by parent will be able to download only those lines which where the header is also downloaded. I will also talk about that later on. And we are also about to change the line format, and now we are also introducing that you can reorder the fields on the pages without modifying their actual order on the page itself. This was necessary because of AL extensions, but it's also a nice feature for the CL version, so that's why we have also implemented this feature there. So if you just want to reorder the fields for any reason, that doesn't need object change anymore. And finally, the report parameters. We have created a helper code unit for creating a special report XML file, which you can feed in when you generate the report. And thanks to this feature, you can try to generate any kind of standard or non-standard NAV report. And for MobileNAV, you don't need to do, and you don't need to touch the report object to supply the parameters anymore, because the parameters will be fed in with this special XML format, and by default NAV can also understand this. The NAV reports will utilize that XML, and the report will be printed out with that, and I will also show you the code how it looks like. So let's see the features. So AL extensions. So AL extensions. Of course, MobileNAV was a CEL based solution. and this we are also still maintaining that. That's also very important for us. When we have first converted the code to AL with this text to AL converter tool, we have started from around 1,100 errors, and mostly because of the .NET usage. We have highly utilized .NET for XML parsing or invoking web services or hashing or encrypting, whatever. And of course, with AL, it's not possible, so we have to get rid of those in the AL extension version. Then we also maintaining the metadata, the object metadata, and that's somewhat different in the AL world. So those also had to be totally redesigned. Yeah, so our web service invocations are also different, and we had this MobileNAV component DLL, and obviously in the AL version there is no possibility for that, so we had to totally get rid of that for the AL extension version. And file handling is also different in AL. Okay, there are some breaking changes, but not that many. We had a many suite with the CAL version, and basically that is not available in the AL extension world. So there we basically created a one-page design for the administration, and we have created a MobileNAV administration page, which is a one-page design, and from that one page you can access all the other options what was traditionally in the many suite object under different paths. You will see that later on. Multi-file import and export is not possible in AL. We possibly will support to be zip them in one zip file, and then you can still export or import multiple files at once. We had that, for example, in the general setup when you try to export all the JavaScript or import all the JavaScript objects or export the page, the configuration icons or the application icons in one directory. That's not available in AL, so those will be zipped. Color preview. Yeah, it was a nice way of showing the colors, the custom colors, what you set up in the general setup. That's not available. Decimal places had to be manual. We have introduced the decimal places in 4.8, and in that version, the CAL word and the CAL word can still grab that from the page object, but that is not available in the AL extension. So we could extract many things from the object metadata from the pages, but the decimal places was not possible. So we basically created a new field for that where you can manipulate that inside our configuration. And NTLM authentication is not possible with AL extension version. So if you have such a setup on your on-prem Business Central, then AL extension is not an option right now. Microsoft is promising that AL type will support it sooner or later, and then of course MobileNAV will also support that. And before we go into the assisted setup, I would like to also mention that what we have also managed to achieve by the end of this 4.9 release is that the CAL word and the AL word is very close together. So basically we have made a very huge refactor in the CAL code base what we have, and we have separated those parts of the code which could be basically platform independent. So independent in whether it is 2009 R2 or Business Central or AL, that can be converted from the CAL code to the AL, and both will work. So that is what we call the common part of the MobileNAV add-on. And the rest is basically separated and encapsulated into smaller code units, which what we call platform-dependent code units, which are basically maintaining the platform-specific parts of the code. And we try to minimize those code units. So the result was that basically, I would say very low, so 5 to 10% of our code base is platform specific, but the rest is common. Basically what that means. So when we basically introduce a new add-on feature, then we normally develop it in the latest available version, which is Business Central nowadays, and we develop that in the CEL code base. Then we develop that in the CEL code base, and we use converter tool, which basically also creates this common part for the rest of the supported platform, and also translate that common CEL to the AL automatically, and both projects will compile. So if that multiplication doesn't really utilize any platform-specific part, then we need to just develop in one version. Okay, Assisted Setup. That's basically a step-by-step wizard for MobileNAV installation. Basically, during the steps, you can import your license key, or you can also, we have also introduced a new feature here, which is called Start Trial. With that feature, you can start a trial with the AL extension version for 1 month and 5 devices, either without our sales assistance. Because now, if you want to start a trial, you need to write an email to our sales team. They will generate you a license key, a trial license key, and then you can import it. Now, if you just want to start a 1 month period for your customer, you don't need our assistance anymore if you use the AL version, because it's important that we only limited the start trial for the AL extension version. The next step is importing the configuration. And there we have also introduced a new feature, which basically is the possibility to import the base configuration without the XML file. So basically, when you running the assisted setup, or you basically try to import any or run our configuration handling report, you will see that there is a combo box which offers you to import the base configuration, or you want to import a custom configuration from an XML file. And now we have basically encapsulated our configuration XML as an object. So basically, when you will import the MobileNAV configuration objects, that will also include a special code unit which contains the configuration XML in encrypted and in compressed and base64 encoded format. So therefore, you can basically without the XML file, you can just import the base configuration as it is, and you don't need to import search for the XML, or you don't need to copy that over. You just basically import the files, the add-on files and the configuration files, and then you can do that with those, and you don't need the XML file anymore. Yes, and the last step is about creating the MobileNAV users. There you can select the user and you can choose a profile depending on whether you have chosen a base configuration or custom configuration. Then you will be provided with a different view, which basically also about how to simplify the first usage of MobileNAV. So when someone will download that from the marketplace, from the App Store, he should be able to start using MobileNAV with a trial license key very, very easily. Yes, and I've talked about this part of the story. Okay, before we start this, let me check my system, whether it managed to publish to the Business Central. I'm having a Business Central system where I have a production system, and I'm creating normally a sandbox system where what I'm basically using for the Visual Studio Code, and the Visual Studio Code can upload the AL package into the environment. So basically the preparation, what we did we have created some test users for Business Central, and that those test users are started this Business Central instance. So you can also realize that I'm not cheating. This is Business Central with a special tenant ID here. So this is the sandbox environment. It already available, and let's see. MobileNAV is not here, so I will do just one last attempt to launch this, because just before the demo I resetted everything just to be able to show you the assisted setup and how you can basically start to use MobileNAV. So hopefully this will publish the package into the sandbox environment now. If that fails, then we will skip this part of the demo, but I will promise that I will make a video about that, and we will publish that for you if this would not work for any reason. Okay, great. So the environment has started. Great, I'm not using Mozilla, sorry, I need to go back here and press Add Queue for Assisted Setup. And there you go. So among the setups, here you can see Setup MobileNAV, which is our assisted setup, and among the different other assisted setup which are provided by additional solutions or by standard Microsoft, those will be listed, and MobileNAV will also be included here. So let's start it. Of course, there is a welcome screen where you can press next to go to the next step. And as I promised, for the license key, you can choose whether to start a trial period or the traditional way where you provide your license key is still here. So if you press the import license, then the well-known license import UI will open where you can import your license. But let's start a trial period for now. Now the system will detect that the schema version has changed, so it did the upgrade, and now the next step comes, which is about to import the configuration. And if you press this import configuration, then you can realize that the configuration handling report has changed a little bit, because the processing method is offering you to import the base configuration, or you can also import a custom configuration. If you choose for the custom configuration, then of course you need to browse for the file, and that should be imported afterwards. So if you still for example moving customized configuration between environments, you still will use that. But there is an option now to import the base configuration. So let's try this. Yes, I do want to modify the configuration. And as you can see, without basically importing the XML file, the system automatically extracted the included configuration XML from the code unit, from a special code unit, and it started to import the base configuration of MobileNAV. And the base configuration XML code unit is basically packaged together with the configuration object. So from now, when we are releasing the newer configuration, we will also release that packaged base and compressed base configuration together with the configuration objects. So now it will do the import. The first import is about 2 or 3 minutes, which is somewhat slower than the CAL version. Don't forget that we are running under Business Central at the moment on AL extensions, and yeah, that has some performance penalty. but it's working. So you can use the AL extension version. Of course, if you are using the on-prem with the AL extension, that is somewhat faster. But I would say that CL is performing better compared to AL. But hopefully, Microsoft will improve that in the future. Okay, it's just about to finalize it. Until it is changing the progress bar, then we can know it's not frozen, so it's still working. But I hope that it's on the very last seconds now. Okay, there you go. So now we have successfully finished the configuration XML import, which was the base configuration because I have not browsed anything into the system. And the next step is to set up the user, because the user are also mandatory if you want to start to connect the device to the system. So if you press the three dots, then you can open up your user list, which is basically already assigned and configured for NAV. So let's choose this test user here. And here, since we have imported the base configuration, we have tried to simplify how the first users, basically the newcomers who are first meeting with MobileNAV, how they can much more easily understand what is going on. And if you remember that we have many different profiles for sales, for service, and we also have this online and offline version of each and every profile. So we thought that it would be too much complicated for the first comers. So therefore, we have basically created a much simplified profile selector, which basically only asks for which part are you interested in. So let's choose, for example, warehouse advanced profile, and let's choose for the login mode and leave it as this. For the login mode, you can choose online, offline, or auto online, offline. There we have also got rid of some other options, which is not part of this Assisted Setup. Of course, when we finish it, and I will also show you that later on, those will be still available. So let's press next. and now the assisted setup has now completed. So now go to MobileNAV administration, and as I promised, if you start typing mobile into the search window of Business Central, then this new MobileNAV administration all-in-one page will be offered. And if you open it up, then you will see that basically here we have all the different options what was previously possible and available in the menu suite. But now we have this all-in-one page where you can go wherever you want to go. And you can also see that the configured pages are 162. So that means that our configuration has been imported. In the setup, in the user setup, you can see that there is one user already created. And of course, this is the already well-known user configuration with the salesperson called location filters. And you can also see that the profiles are already filled with the warehouse advanced online version because the user has selected the online user. Yeah, so basically that is what the assisted setup does. And let's also check the trial license. So if you open up the device management, then you can see that the trial has been started. So 5 available users until the next month. So that is what the assisted setup is about, and basically all is what we really need if we want to log in. So if I go to switch my MobileNAV environment, then you can see our simplified login screen. But before I'm introducing that, let's switch back to the PowerPoint slides, and let me talk about that part. So now we have introduced Office 365 authentication and a simplified login screen because the login configurations were not that well known. That was one reason. That they were basically hidden in the MobileNAV menu on the login screen, and many cases the users were not able to find that. So we had many support questions that when they are, for example, switching the user on the login screen, then MobileNAV every time downloads the configuration. Yes, because that's a configuration change, and the system, and they have not saved the previous login configuration before that. So now we have got rid of that concept, and therefore we have also redesigned the login screen. Now you can add, edit, or delete the login configurations, and we have also introduced a new feature which is allows you to import login configurations from special XML files, what I will also show you in the demo. And now it also supports Office 365 authentication. So let's switch back, and then you can see what we were talking about. So originally, this login configuration menu was available in here. So on the login screen, you need to press this MobileNAV icon, and then there were login configurations. From there, you could choose. Now we have moved this to this blue combo box here, which already shows the actual login configuration what I was last used during the MobileNAV login. If you press this button, then the well-known login configuration selector will open, but with somewhat more options now. So now you are not just able to select between these different login configurations, but you can also press this pencil icon, which will edit that particular login configuration. You can press the new button for creating a new login configuration, and you can manually import that special XML type or XML file, which can already contain these data pre-filled for the users. Yeah, let's press the edit for this particular login configuration, and now this window will be very familiar with you, because that's basically our previous login screen, where you could edit the username, the password, the domain, the SSL, the server, instance, tenant, and company, and you could choose the save password. Now on this login configuration editor window, you can very easily make a copy of this. So if you want to just basically copy this between multiple users, and the only thing what you want to change is the username, but everything else should remain, then you simply press this copy, and the username password will be blank, and only those two what you need to fill out for that new login configuration. And you can, of course, you need to specify the name of the login configuration. You can also save and delete it. If you press save, then we will do a check. So basically, if I press this, then the system will try to communicate with that service tier what you have set up, and if that is successful and available, then it will be saved. If not, then MobileNAV will show a message. I will try to also show you that. So let's try this one here. No, sorry. If I press edit and I press save, now it will try to find that address, but it will fail. So it will show you the error message what it has received. That's basically a general error message, what you normally see when you are trying to connect to a certain address. But we also are offering to save that. So do we want to save it anyway? And if he says yes here, then it will still be saved for later usage if you want to just start that service, because that is not running. So you can easily choose here. You can edit the already existing ones. You can create a new here. You can import an XML file that is also available. But let's see how an Office 365 authentication window looks like, which is basically somewhat different. On the top of the screen under the name, you can realize that there is an authentication type, which was user and password for the login configurations what I have shown so far. When it comes to Office 365 authentication, then for the username, password, and domain, instead of those fields, we are having somewhat different settings here. Because with Office 365, you need to authenticate with the Azure Active Directory. And for that, we need the tenant ID of your Azure AD. We also need to know the application ID, what you create for the MobileNAV authentication application. We also need a redirectory, which should match with the application ID. And there is also an app ID URI, and optional, you can also provide a PIN. That is important if you want to allow offline login, and if you really lost the connection to the internet and there is no way to check your Office 365 credentials, then we ask for this PIN before we allow the user to log into the offline database. So but basically these four fields belonging to Office 365 environment. The redirectory is basically it's configurable, but you can also configure always this URL, so that's not that interesting. But the rest, these two, it is really coming from the Azure AD, and in this case we are connecting to this Business Central environment, Business Central SaaS environment. So therefore, the app ID URI is also basically this. So this will also never change when you are connecting to the Business Central SaaS version. Of course, if you are connecting to an on-prem system, then this app ID URI will be different, of course. And under this part, the rest, which is about how to connect to the service tier itself, will remain. So there we have the server, instance, and tenant as well for the service tier. Because the first part, the upper part, is for the Azure AD that allows you to authenticate yourself against the Azure Active Directory, and the lower part is when you already authenticated yourself and you have a token. Then you can go and invoke the web service for the service tier. And if I press save here, then the well-known Office 365 authentication window will appear. If you have already provided your username, and in this case I'm already having that filled in, then the user is already filled in. Of course, you can also still choose to sign in with a different account. Now I'm just providing the user the password, and as I said, at this moment we are also communicating with that service tier, and we are checking against these credentials. On the login screen, as you can see now, only the user ID what is visible, which just gives some information for the user which user is he logging in with. This user ID is the NAV user ID. If you remember, we have created that test user in the Business Central. So if I switch back here, then the test user is our user ID. If you press this button here, then you can also expand the lower part. So there you can still check the server, instance, and tenant and company what you are logging into. But with the simplified login screen, you don't need to take care about that. So if you just about to have a couple of login configuration with proper naming, then you don't need those details anymore, because you will know that from the name of the login configuration. And switching between login configuration is very, very easy, as you can see. So now let's try to log in. For the first time, the system will ask again for the credentials because we do not utilize the one what you have. Yeah, this is the one what I forgot. I will do that later on. So you need to you need to authenticate yourself, and if the server allows you to save the password and save the credentials, then you don't need to provide the password until the Azure AD allows you to not to ask for the password again, because there are some password policies there, so you can also manage that. So what was this error in Business Central? In Business Central, when you are installing a new extension, then I have forgotten to do one thing, and that should also be working together with the Assisted Setup. But for now, for some reason, it doesn't work. But let me do that manually. And what needs to be done is this flag here. So if you go to your extensions, and you can see this MobileNAV extensions among the other extensions, then there is an allow HTTP client requests, and that needs to be turned on, obviously, because MobileNAV add-on is invoking himself through web services to find out what a certain user needs to download during the login. So what are those offline pages and whether they need to be recalculated or not. So this has to be turned on, and then if I switch back and press login again, then hopefully it will work. So now we are just about to log in to this Business Central SaaS sandbox, what we have just previously compiled with the Visual Studio code, and we have executed the assisted setup on that, and basically that's it. So now we are just logging in with MobileNAV via providing the credentials. So hopefully it will be able to generate the first configuration for this user, because now this is the first login for the first MobileNAV login of this test user. Task was cancelled. Great. Okay, let me check it. Sorry. I will give it another try. I will slightly change just one setting here, and we'll try it like that, and hopefully it will work. If not, then I'm sorry, but then you need to believe me. So, but last time when we had this webinar about 4.9 in January, mid of January, then you could already see that this working. So you possibly will believe me. And Okay, until that is logging in, there is a question about whether it is possible to delete the configuration without a connection now. Yes. So now you can simply go and edit the configuration and you can delete it. Of course, this also have the question whether then anyone is logging in or starting up MobileNAV on a device, then he can delete every kind of MobileNAV configuration. Okay, this doesn't seem to work. But you may believe me that it can log in and connect properly. So now you can, yes, you can delete any kind of login configurations from here. Okay, so that was about the simplified login screen and the Office 365 login credential and authentication support. Next topic, because I'm having something like 10 minutes, so I need to rush. This new type of recalculation strategy, which is called buy trigger. As you may already know, when it comes to downloading the offline data, then there are some check for changes, type of check for changes options in MobileNAV. Before this, we supported the buy client and the buy-ness option, which basically means that those pages are recalculated while the user is logging in. So when he is pressing this login button on the UI, and in the first call, then the add-on will invoke himself and calculate all the offline pages, and then he calculates whether a certain offline page should be downloaded by the client application or not. If you are having many data on a certain page, then your option was the buy-ness, which allowed you to set up the job queue. The MobileNAV already created the job queue automatically, and the job queue was able to recalculate the offline pages for each and every offline user one by one periodically. So there you could basically set up, for example, 24 hours for the items if you are having, I don't know, 100,000 items in the system, and then in that case, every once a day, the job queue has made the recalculation, so it checked for changes in the item offline page for each and every user, and on the next time the user logged in, then he could decide whether or not to download the items, or in case of record level synchronization, it just downloaded the data. Now we have introduced this buy trigger option, which means that neither during the login and neither by NAS, these offline pages will be recalculated, because the buy trigger option says to MobileNAV that MobileNAV should not take care about this page anymore. So basically, this type of offline pages will be skipped by the system by default. Okay, but then how the client will download the changes? The answer is twofold. If you are having an older version of NAV, then you need to do some coding. So either on the table level or on the pages where you normally modify those records, which needs to be downloaded for the offline device, you need to build in some lines of code which can trigger and notify our MobileNAV add-on that a certain page or a certain record has changed or created or deleted with that. And for that, we are having methods, so you can invoke them easily. You basically just need to provide the page, so the service name of the offline page. And if you are having a record level sync, then the record GUID of that record. If you are having 2016 or above, then you are having event subscribers, and that's a very nice feature, because now you can create something like a subscriber code unit, which subscribes for the data changes. So if there is a new record created or modified or deleted, then you have your trigger, and inside that trigger you can automatically invoke and notify MobileNAV add-on that a certain offline record or page has been changed. And the good news is that we have already built that into the configuration. So if you are using 2016 MobileNAV base configuration for 4.9, then you will realize that many pages are equipped with the buy trigger option by default, and that means that those pages, those offline pages, should not be recalculated anymore. Let me show that in the Business Central for a sec. So if you open up this MobileNAV configuration list, then you can also see that we have included a couple of more information here. So not just the page ID and the service name and localized name, but now we have the page type as well here, and we also have the type of check for changes automatically here. And as you can see, there are many buy trigger options here. So the currencies, contacts, customers, so all of those pages which are offline capable in our base configuration can be and already configured for the buy trigger option. And how that works. So let me open the AL version of this story. So there is a MN buy trigger subscription code unit. And inside that code unit, there are some logic. But basically what is important here is two things. There is a get database trigger table trigger setup, which basically asks whether are you about to subscribe to a certain on insert, on after database insert, or on after database modify, or after database delete or rename method. So basically this will be triggered by the system automatically, and MobileNAV basically just searches for offline pages in the system, which are offline or offline card, and the check for changes type is by trigger. And if that's the case, then we are subscribing for that particular table as an event subscriber. And when the event subscriber will hit, then we will call just an internal method, which is on the beginning of this code unit. And that basically checks whether it is a record level synchronization or not. Of course, it searches for the same page. And if it is not record level synchronization, but just a page level, then it invokes our offline functions code unit for updating the service with the service name, and that's all. So that's just one line of code. And in the other case, it searches for the rec GUID and it gets the value. And if it has having the rec GUID value, then it invokes that offline functions to notify that a certain record has changed in the system. And basically that's the heart of the whole story. So we are subscribing to tables, to table changes, insert, update, or modify, and that will automatically update, notify MobileNAV about that. And for those pages, you don't need recalculation, because if another user will modify a certain item, for example, then this event subscriber will run and hit, and then it will modify the timestamp for MobileNAV. So next time a different user will log in, then he can download that record as a change. So let me demonstrate this to you. This is a local Business Central on-prem version, and here I'm having the CAL version. It's only because it was a bit easier to set up the record level sync. And what I have did here is that obviously I have extended the item table with our rec GUID and those three fields which are necessary for record level synchronization. And I have slightly modified the MN item page for the record level sync again. So there I'm having these two fields and that 1 or 2 line code on the beginning of the page, which basically sets the page number filter for the record level sync. But that was the only preparation. Of course, when you will have a AL extension version, then you need to write an extension for this kind of modifications. But that's possible, because what we have done is that we have added 3 fields to the item table, which are additional fields, and you can extend the item on open trigger and execute some other code there. So that was a preparation, and the MN item page is configured for record level sync. So if you go down here, then you can see that the check for synchronization is set to last data modified. And for the MN item, the type of check for changes is by trigger. So that means that the MN items should not be recalculated. You can see that here that I have created 30,000 records in the system, which will mean that it will. So if I would first download the items, it will take a while. I could also create more, but that doesn't really matter. So when you first download the items, even if I'm having the Hyper-V computer running on my PC, it takes about 30 seconds to download that many records to MobileNAV. And if I log in with that environment, I think that's the one, yeah. And I press the refresh offline data, then you will see that this is not the first login anymore, because those 30,000 items are downloaded here. So if I open up the items here and I'm in offline mode, as you can see, now I can see those many items. So these are the items what I have created here with a very simple code in it. So let's do the following. Let's go back and open up the items on the home page, and let's modify the bicycle description. Let's create a new item like test. So we have created a new item here, and we have modified an already existing one. So this normally should download only 2 records, right? Because we have changed the description and created one new field. One new item. So if I go back, and let's do that via logging out and logging back again, and refreshing the offline data. So now it will ask me do you want me to refresh the offline data? Yes, I do want to. And as you can see now, it will be pretty fast identify that I'm only having a couple of changes, and it will, within a couple of seconds it downloaded the changes. But let's check whether it really happened. So opening up the items again, go to bicycle, and there you go. Bicycle is having new description here, and let's search for the test item. Apply, and there you go. So this is the new item what we have created. So as you could see, because to recalculate the 30,000 items during the login would have been too much. The NAS is not running, I can assure you. Because the by trigger option is set for type of check for changes. So I don't need to do anything. I don't need to recalculate anything. If the by trigger option is good for you, because it also has some limitations, obviously, then you can make sure that that you are not giving too much performance penalty on your service tier via recalculating those pages from time to time. So I really advise you to, if for nothing else, what you have heard so far, I really advise to upgrade for 4.9, because this is a very cool new feature for offline implementations, because this will drastically minimize the recalculation time for the offline pages, and it will also make those offline pages very rapid, because right after change, as you could see, I was able to log in and see the changes without much hassle. Okay, so that was the by trigger option. Okay, refresh after and filter by parent. The refresh after and the filter by parent is advised to be used for traditional parent and child related offline pages. So if you have a header and line relation, then you can utilize this new feature. The refresh after is basically an option for the child pages. If you specify the parent offline page for a child page in the refresh after, then it will mean that certain options in the page configuration will be disabled on the client, on the child, sorry, because those for example, the type of check for changes, the period, or the initial check for changes date time will be inherited from the parent. And what will happen is that during the offline recalculation, whether it is by client or by NAS or by trigger, so right after refreshing the parent page, the child or the children page will also be refreshed if it is bound together with this refresh after setting. The other option is the filter by parent, and that also utilizes this parent and child relation in the offline on the offline page code. With this filter by parent technique, you can basically provide a couple of lines of code. The code is basically listed here, and this we utilize the marking technique to mark the child records according to the parent records included. Of course, this technique basically utilizes that the offline admin table of MobileNAV, which is basically the result and the table of the offline recalculation, that table needs to be already contain the parent records. So if you have a child relation like sales order line, and you want to make sure that you only download those sales order lines from which the sales order header is downloaded for that particular user, because you have a special type of filtering, then you can use this technique. Because as you can see in the code, first it checks whether the offline filter by parent is enabled for the child and parent, because both the offline and both the child and the parent page has to be offline, obviously. And we have also made a flag with that. You can enable this filter by parent enabled on the configuration page. I will also show you that later on. And if you enable that, then it retrieves the offline records for the header from the MobileNAV offline admin table, and you can iterate through that offline admin header tables. And what we have done is that we have extracted the header key fields, namely the first three primary keys of the header, namely the first, second, and the third one. So in case of, for example, sales header table, we have extracted the document type and the document number. So we are not really utilizing the third one in this case. But we have thought about how many keys should we extract. Later on, we might increase this number, but we have checked our base configuration, and we don't need 3 keys in our base configuration to utilize that for the traditional parent and child relations. You might have a exception, of course, but if you tell us that you really need this to be extended for I don't know, to 6 keys or whatever, then we might include that in the next release. And then when it goes through the header records, then you can set your filter for the children, and you can mark the children one by one. And once you finish this process, so you basically mark the children by the parent records one by one, then we just display the marked on records in the end. Of course, this technique has some disadvantages. If you are marking quite many records on the page, then this can be slow. So this only has some advantage if, for example, the children of offline page would contain many records, like 100,000 records. But with that special filtering on the parent page, you can narrow it down to 1,000 records for the lines, for example. In that case, it does make sense to utilize this. And with this couple of lines of code, now you are able to do that. I will also show you the configuration of that. So let me switch back to the RTC client, so I will go to lists, configuration, and for example, I can show you, for example, the item cross-reference. On the item cross-reference, we have already configured a check for changes after MN item, so it means that the item cross-reference will be recalculated after the MN item was recalculated already. That's one thing. And the second thing is that we, in the offline section, we have this filter by parent enabled flag, and with that you can enable this couple of lines of code. Of course, that is important that if you go to the item unit of measure or the item cross-reference, doesn't matter. On those pages, we have already included this couple of lines of code. If you don't have that code and you just enable this flag here, then nothing will happen. So this is only just an on and off possibility for turning this feature on and off because of the performance penalty. So what we are willing to release in 4.9 for the base configuration pages is that for those children pages where it does make sense to filter the children by the parent records, we will include this code. But by default, this filter by parent will be disabled, just like here. So it won't be turned on. And if you apply special filtering for the items, for example, I'm having 100,000 items, but I'm only willing to download those one where I'm having some inventory or whatever. So you can narrow that 100,000 items down to 1,000, and you want to also download only the item cross-references or item unit of measures for those 1,000 items, then you can just simply turn this flag on and it will work, because we have already included those lines of code in the base configuration pages. But you can utilize this for any other custom page as well. Okay, line format, order and order fields. I already talked about this one. Oops, let me go back. So we are willing to change the line format because at the moment or 4.8 or before, we had this number-based line format, which was not that talkful. So when you have looked on our first and second line format, you don't really know what this means. So now we are changing that to field names. So now you will have the line format in such a format, so where you can see that the number value, the description value, the quantity value, and the unit of measure code value will be included with these kind of separators and etc. So I think this is much better when you are just looking on what is included here. And one other important thing is that now the order, as I promised, can be changed on the configuration page. I can also show you that. So here, for example, on the item cross-reference, you can simply use the move up and move down buttons. Not in this case, yeah, maybe this is not a good example, because we are not allowing to change the primary key field order, because that has some meaning for us. But if you have, for example, the MN job, where the number is the primary key, other than that, you can move and up the fields in the configuration very easily, and that is also true, of course, for the Business Central version. So if I switch back and I open up, for example, the customers, I make this wider, then I can also scroll down and I can, for example, move the address up or down. So you can also move the fields around, and that will work. And since we are not having the field position in the line format anymore, you can do that freely. So you won't mess up the first and second line format anymore, because if you just change the order, that won't mess up the field format anymore. Okay, report parameters. That's the final step, I promise, because I was a bit longer than than before. So now the report parameters, we are doing a couple of things. In the page configuration, you can specify the report ID. So there you can bind the NAV report object with a certain request page in the MobileNAV configuration. That's one thing. The second thing is that you can also try to bind the request page fields with report fields, and those fields can be either dataset fields or report parameters. So let me also show you how that works in the configuration. So if I open up, for example, the customer top 10 report, then you can see that first of all there is a report ID here, and it's configured for the default customer top 10 report of NAV. Previously to this one, we had a copy always for the customer top 10 report, because we had to somehow fill in our parameters when we are executing a report in MobileNAV. Now this is not important anymore, so you can use any kind of report in the system. And then you can have a couple of parameters here, like here we have 4 parameters, and one by one you can bind them with the report field source and the report field name. So if you check the report field source, there you can choose whether it is a report parameter or a customer data set. And if you have a customer data set, then you can also open it up and you can choose a field from here, from the table. Or if it's a report parameter, then you can also open it up and choose among the report parameter types. And that will automatically offer the report parameter name for you, what is requested by NAV or by this particular report. So this will work out of the box. And how the code looks like, let me also show you that. So there is this MN report functions. And this is the code now. This is the new code. What is responsible for printing out the customer top 10 report? Basically, it's initializing the language, because that's interesting that the user is getting the report on his language, obviously. And then we have this report handler code unit, which is a helper code unit. There you can initialize the report handle by specifying the request page service name. And then you can use this add page by page field, which basically checks for the mapping what you have done on this customer top 10 report page, and checks for the customer no field name, and checks its mapping in the MobileNAV configuration. So basically, we just invoking the add by page field 4 times for the 4 parameters. And we will include basically what we need to provide here is the field name and the value. And the value is still coming from the method, because that will be invoked by the MobileNAV application with a certain customer number filter, with the number of records what has been entered by the user, or the show type, etc. So those values are still coming from MobileNAV, but you can very easily invoke these commands to fill them into the report handler code unit. And finally, you just invoke the generate button or generate method, which specifies the format, which can be PDF, Excel, or HTML. And as a result, you will get back the base64 result, which the method should also return to the client application. And with that, you can print out the report. Let me go back here and check whether I'm having any report here. No, I don't. So I cannot show you this part now. But if I would choose a different profile, then you may believe me that the report will still be printed just like before. But now it's much easier, and you don't need to modify your report object anymore. Because thanks to this report helper code unit, that report parameter XML will be generated automatically. And we also provided add parameter and add data item filter, which is basically either can work without mapping. So if you don't want to use our mapping, then you can also do that manually. So when you receive a certain parameter and you know what is the parameter name, then you just simply invoke the add parameter with the parameter name and the value, and then it will be added. So that's also an option. Internally, to be honest, this also does the same. So if you go into the definition of this one, then it decides whether it is a parameter or a data item filter, and it's basically invoking the add parameter, what you can also use directly if you wish. Okay. Yes, the assignment I was talking about. So roadmap. That's my final slide, I promise. 4.9 release. The 4.9 release will happen in the upcoming days, possibly and hopefully by the end of this week. So there we will release the new 4.9 add-on, the new 4.9 base configuration, and we will release the iOS, the Windows 8, 10, and the Android application, hopefully by the end of this week. So we are running our final test with these software elements. NAV 2009 R2 version, Windows CE and Windows Phone will be published a bit later, as previously. Our priority will be the 2009 R2 and the Windows CE in parallel. So those will happen in the next few weeks, and the Windows Phone will be the last one. And as I promised, we will also release an AR renumbered version as well for the SAS manual upload, because the previously demonstrated AR extension can also be uploaded manually to SAS if it's in the 50,000 and 100,000 object range. So that's the 4.9 release roadmap. After that release, we are planning to release a new universal platform application, which is targeting Windows 10 and Windows Phone 10. And there we will be able to utilize certain UWP related features, like the barcode scanner or the Office 365 authentication on Windows Phone, because on Windows Phone it doesn't seem to work by default, on Windows Phone 8, but on Windows Phone 10, if you are using Windows UWP app, then it seems to be working. But the same is true for the keyboard emulation. The keyboard emulation was not working very well in Windows Phone. Now with the UWP app, we can fully utilize that for if you are having a Windows Phone 10 scanner, for example. So that will be the next release of MobileNAV, and that we are planning to release that by the end of Q2, so somewhere in the summer. After that, and then maybe parallel to that, we are working on 4.10, which is targeting the next conference season, which is in October 9th, as I believe. The directions EMA in Vienna. So by that start, we are planning to release 4.10, which is mostly about Xamarin-based iOS and Android platform, because our applications at the moment are mostly Windows-based. So the Windows 8, 8.10, the Windows Phone, and the Windows CE is already Windows and .NET based projects, and there we already having a common .NET common DLL, which is basically utilized across this platform. So when we do a certain coding or modification, then hopefully if that doesn't really touches platform specific parts of the code, like UI or file handling, etc., then we only need to develop that once, and all of those three platforms we utilize that. Now we are also planning to do that, to do the same for iOS and Android with this Xamarin project. because Xamarin is already providing .NET support. So there we can use this .NET Common DLL as it is, mainly. And the UI part can be either developed with Xamarin Forms or native UI. We are investigating what will be the best option for us. Possibly with iOS we will choose the native UI Xamarin project, and Android we will try to check it with Android. Xamarin Forms. And those two applications now will also be .NET based. And with this technique, now we will have one common .NET DLL, .NET code across all of our mobile platform. And this is a very, very big advantage, because now the quality and the development time can be much faster, because those common parts which are not platform dependent can be developed in that .NET common project, and only just the UI parts or the platform specific parts need to be developed in the specific platforms one by one. So we expect higher quality from this move and faster development. Of course, with the 4.10 release, we will also release some smaller features. So just like with the 4.8, for example, we have released many smaller features which were mentioned there. For example, we are also I have not mentioned that, but with 4.9 we are releasing the disabling and enabling the safe password, for example, on the server side. So now on the general setup of MobileNAV, you can simply open the general setup and disable the or allow the safe password option on the client. And if you disable this, then no matter what the user is pressing on the login screen, that he's pressing a safe password, then after the first authentication to that server, that checkbox will be removed for the user, because that's not allowed on this server. So you can also have and such smaller features can be developed much easier with the help of .NET support, of Xamarin, and yes, we are planning to also include those smaller features. So that concludes my presentation. So now I think you can ask questions. Okay, I already see a question here, but okay, have you got a list of mobile devices that the system is compatible with? Yeah, of course. If you go to MobileNAV website, and I assume that you are mostly interested for the barcode scanner. Yes, we have a barcode scanner page there where you can check out the different options, which platform do you prefer, like Android or Windows CE or Windows 8, for example. Then you can see the different options there. And our test house has already saw a couple of devices, and there we are listing all of those. Okay, is there any other question? I don't have any questions here, but feel free to ask in the questions dialog. There you can type in your questions, and then you can ask. But of course, if you just having questions afterwards, then you can also write us an email to the contact@mobilenav.com, and you can ask your questions, and we will try to answer those. This webinar will also be recorded, and after recording, our sales team will publish that to the YouTube, so you can also show and send the link to your colleagues as well. If you don't have any other questions for now, then thank you very much for the attendance, and I'm sorry that we took more than 1.5 hours to to finish the webinar. This was a bit longer than expected, but I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you very much. Bye bye.